Newly released court documents show that the FBI seized and searched the computer of top Hillary Clinton aide Huma Abedin, owned by her estranged husband, Anthony Weiner. That to continue the email investigation into the Democratic presidential nominee. Now, the FBI discovered Abedin and Clinton were emailing one another, but what exactly the messages were about was unclear at the time. This further angering Democrats who feel the reopening of the FBI investigation into Clinton's emails a few weeks before the election hurt her chances to win against President-elect Donald Trump. Karen Finney is a former spokesperson for the Clinton campaign. She is also the former Democratic National Committee spokesperson. Good to see you, Karen. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Maria.
So first, let me ask you about these unsealed search warrant in Hillary Clinton's email probe and what it reveals. What is your reaction?
Well, I think they revealed what we said all along. I mean, it shows that there was incredibly flimsy information that Director Comey was going on. And, at the time there were reports that part of the reason Director Comey made the announcement that he did 10 days out from the election is that he was afraid of the possibility of leaks coming out of his New York office. So he went ahead and made this announcement. And as we said then, and as we discovered 10 days later, there really was no there. These were duplicate emails. There was no new information. But I think it's very troubling what that says about Director Comey and his ability to run the FBI.
Well, let me ask you about that because, I mean, maybe could it be that it was just the fact that it was on, her emails were on Anthony Weiner's computer that unnerved Comey? Basically, more carelessness to have national secrets or important emails on Anthony Weiner's computer when we know he was sexting and doing all sorts of, well, whatever he was doing.
Right. Well, look, here's the thing I would say about that. What concerns, I think, a lot of people, and I think still is an open question, is that Director Comey made a decision to do something that was unprecedented and sort of without actual, previous precedent, I guess is the way to say it. And what's interesting about that is consider that when we were talking about Russian hacking, there were 17 of our intelligence agencies had just about a month or so earlier agreed that among the intelligence that there was evidence that the Russians had been hacking, and that's when DNI and Homeland Security came out and made a statement, and the FBI, Director Comey didn't want to join that statement because he thought it would be too political. And so for him to then break with precedent and break with sort of the norms of the FBI 10 days before an election to do something that was clearly very political, I think is troubling. And look, here's the thing, though, Maria, that I think is so important. I mean, at this point, the election is over, the results are in, Donald Trump is our president-elect. But I do think there are questions raised going forward about the FBI that are legitimate and I think are things we need to look into. And I can just tell you from having been on the ground that there was absolutely a chilling effect in terms of the momentum from being in some of the same states, some of those key states, just a few days before that letter came out to a few days after that letter came out.
Let me move on, Karen, because there's a lot of debate about where the party goes now. And I know that voters recently voted back in Nancy Pelosi. You've got Elizabeth Warren pulling from the left, the center. You've got Bernie Sanders and his very leftist policies pulling the party toward the left from the center. Same with Barack Obama. Do you think that's what the people want? I mean, based on what we just saw in this election, do you think that voters want to see the Democratic Party all the way to the left, the way that these folks are pulling the party?
Well, I take a different view, and what I see in terms of the leadership here in Washington is kind of an array, frankly, of voices and faces. Don't forget there's Joe Manchin, don't forget Mark Warner of Virginia, and so I think that is actually a good thing to say, let's open this up and hear from more parts of our party. Look, I also think, Maria, let's be very clear about what the results of the election really told us. I mean, Hillary Clinton has 2.8 million more votes in the popular vote than Donald Trump. So my question is, well, what about those people? We know that some 3 million or more people voted for third-party candidates. what about those people? So when we talk about what did Americans want, I think we need to look at the full picture. And I think when we look at that full picture, I think the issue here is making sure that we hold Donald Trump accountable to the promises that he made to the American people. Because I think what people wanted, it wasn't just about anti-establishment, although I think that was a very clear headwind, no question. At the same time, people wanted to be heard. It was about jobs. It was about protecting Medicare and Social Security and, infrastructure, creating more.
That's my
so
point.
all of those things, but this is my point. So my point is, all of those things are things that Democrats have been also talking about for a very long time. President Obama tried to get many of those things done. He was, rebuked, frankly, at every turn by Republicans who basically said anything from Obama is going to be a negative.
Well,
so
he had the
first
2 years of his administration. He had both chambers. He could have gotten anything done the first 2 years,
well,
and he chose to push through Obamacare.
That's not exactly how it works. But, I mean, and again, if the Republicans had been interested, though, at the time in getting infrastructure done, we could have gotten that done. So my point here is, I think what you're seeing inside Washington is an attempt to try to broaden out sort of who are the leaders or who are of the party. But look, I think there's a bigger challenge for the party going forward, and that is we need to be much more broad in the voices and faces of our party. We have people in our party from all walks of life, from all parts of this country, from people who serve in the military, people who work in restaurants, people who are small business owners, people so people in all facets of life. And I think what we need to do is represent those folks. And I think part of the issue here is we need to have a stronger presence out in the states, have a real 50-state strategy like we had under that Chairman Howard Dean was trying to bring to fruition, which was to really make sure that we showed up everywhere and asked people for their votes, but that we were engaged in communities around the country all throughout the year, not just a few days before the election, and that we were really strengthening and building on the talent that exists in our party in the states and where people really live, and really listening to people at that level.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think when you look back at the election, that's what it was all about. You had a lot of people on the left talking about transgender bathrooms and police brutality and climate change, and you had Donald Trump's team talking about jobs. That was the big missed opportunity.
Although I take issue with that. There have been a couple of studies that showed actually that Hillary Clinton talked about jobs more than anything else. And what I would tell you is that some of the coverage did not always reflect that. There was a lot more coverage about other topics than necessarily her jobs plan or her plans to bring back manufacturing or her plans to revitalize, not just urban areas but rural areas, and looking at, sort of how do we make sure that we increase incomes for people. So there was a lot that we were talking about, that she was talking about, that didn't always get the same kind of coverage as, let's say, emails. And I think what's important here...
She should have done more press conferences, she should have done more interviews, and you should have done more debates.
Well, look, I think we would have loved to do more debates, but again, there's an element to, what gets covered, I think certainly does impact what people hear. And I think that's one of the other telling things of this election. It felt like, to some degree, there was a conversation that was going on in the national media that I think what we know now from sort of Facebook and sort of fake news and the alt-right and all of that, there was a whole other conversation going on that I think we need to understand better.
Right. Karen, great to see you. Thank you so much. We'll be watching.